of the Migration Agents Registration Authority, OMARA. We are based in Melbourne. For over 15 years, we've supported individuals, families and employers across Australia through compliant end-to-end migration services. Today, we combine immigration expertise with dedicated international recruitment capability, enabling healthcare providers to build sustainable workforces through skilled global talent. Our integrated model ensures that every placement is supported from sourcing to visa strategy to long-term retention. Now, that is the only thing I am reading verbatim. It's important that you do get that grounding of where we come from. So as we move on, hey everyone, it does look a bit weird, don't I? I can stand next to myself. So I've been in the healthcare industry since 1992. On and off for over 3 decades. I have worked in complex disability, aged care, mental health, day program, recruitment for over 15 years, and I am incredibly proud to be the International Recruitment Manager for Healthcare, working alongside Paul and our South African team, and we will talk to you about them and our international partners as well as we go through. If we just moving along and we go to what we want to cover today. So we got this from you. It's when our clients contact us and that first point of contact. And what you want to talk to us about is what is the healthcare talent gap, what we do and why does it work, how do we cover that end-to-end workforce solution as a partner with you and not separate to that, our global talent pipeline, which is very unique to DSOM, how we cover that risk management, taking the risk out of recruitment for you, what are the outcomes for our providers and partners, and then what are the next steps following this session. When we talk about the talent gap, it's not just what we hear nationally, which is the NDIS sector. We are not just in that sector. It is mental health, it is allied health, it is aged care, it is veterans affairs. It is so much more than one sector that the community seems to focus on. You all know from being either a small business owner in talent acquisition or people and culture that your daily struggles usually stem from an allied health, psychology workforce, mental health workers, counsellors capability. So at the moment, what we're seeing though through our aged population of our gorgeous baby boomers and the expansion of the NDIS is we have tapped in to all of the current talent. And then there are experts in their field who have then tapped into the new grad talent. So as they are constantly filtering through those larger organisations, it has depleted the onshore talent. And about probably 2 years pre-COVID, larger companies started looking at international talent. What it does do is it reduces the high turnover and the burnout of a current workforce in their specific cohort. To give you an example of that, if you've got a large team of occupational therapists and you start seeing a lot of leave come through and a lot of turnover in those staff, usually it is burnout. It is not you as an organisation. It's not how you're managing. It's the sector and the demands that are placed on the sector. When we talk about local talent pipelines, I know what all of you have on SEEK. So today, I've researched every single organisation who are here today, what your current challenges are by looking at SEEK, Indeed, Dora, the costs that you would be spending on that comparison to the costs that you would be spending on international recruitment to get a more sustainable and realistic outcome. What we constantly get is providers coming to us saying, how do I secure an experienced clinician who's from overseas, who then understands our framework? And I am going to go into that for you. All right, so why international recruitment works. So we have access to experienced global clinicians from varying backgrounds. So when you look at a skills occupation list and you go through that, it's very overwhelming. And it's why sometimes you need to come to a specialist recruiter who works exclusively with a migration agent to say, let's break that down. It's not just about an occupational therapist, a speech therapist or a psychologist, which are the top 3 in-demand roles in Australia other than a general practitioner. There are so many other roles and avenues of bulking up your workforce in a skilled capacity to then support those qualified clinicians. To make it very clear, we look at long-term workforce planning. I'm not here today to say to you, would you like a therapist to start in 3 to 6 weeks? I'm saying 3 to 6 months. I then want to meet with you in July when you're doing your business planning for the 26-27 fiscal year and say to you, what does your business plan look like? Where's your growth? Because we can secure the talent now that can start in January 2027. When we start talking about higher retention and stability, often overseas clinicians, they want the stability. They're not going to jump. Paul will explain this when he does his migration information session. They do want long-term settlement. They want to feel part of a community. Often culturally, they come from a community. They're looking for the support, not only through the supervision, but through the organisation and through DZON. And I'll go into what we do as an example of how to help them settle into the community. What our staffing stability does is it certainly, as we've been told, we are certainly contributing to client outcomes in the continuity of care. So if you're looking at a functional capacity assessment for your organisation, somewhere taking a waiting list between 3 to 6 months, when you bring on a new qualified therapist and you're looking at a caseload of 30, then you start thinking, oh, how many FCAs can I get done? How many of those then can be taken into ongoing therapy streams? And there's your continuity of care. We tap into a broader pool. We are very strong on our English proficiencies and skill testing, the clinical alignments, and the and might have a list of 20 candidates, and that is how we match them to your organisation. We do our shortlisting and our quality checks. Before we even get to you, that is what we do. When you are receiving a profile, it is because we have completed the work behind the scenes. If that candidate is not suitable for you, we then have an in-depth discussion as to why. They may not be suitable for you. That's okay. They're going to be suitable for someone else. But it is a rare commodity. It depends on the volume too as the organisation of what you're looking for as to how we then do the skill matching. When we move forward to the visa pathways, that is when Paul will talk to you today, and then we look at the relocation and settlement. I'd like to give you an example of a recent relocation and what we do. Paul has created a sense of family at DZON Associates, and we are all very mature, well-lived life professionals. So when we recently had an occupational therapist land in Melbourne in mid-December with her 2 young children from South Africa, she had been provided 4 weeks temporary accommodation in an Airbnb. Absolutely fantastic. Wow, what the wrong time of year to be searching for a rental property. We all would know that living in Australia. What we did, I reached out to her. The first thing was food bank and the salvo, she got her food parcel started. Why would you go shopping for your groceries when we have incredible organisations, especially at that time of year, that can do outreach services and provide those? So that was organised. I actually got a mortgage broker to get her a car loan for a second-hand car because she was doing a community role. We then settled her in, did an introduction, pre her coming with the local community primary school, and we also linked her in with her cultural preference of religion, and she went to their services over Christmas. That is what we do. We don't just say, here is your candidate and have a nice time. We say to the candidate, when you land, here's my number. And I loved every single minute of it. It's not like the normal recruitment. I've been doing this for 15 years. This is targeted, specialised, and yes, it is for every candidate in healthcare. We then, once we hit those post-arrival check-ins and troubleshooting, we start looking at the retention and the integration, and that is where you come in. You need to have the supports in place of a local community. You should have a manual, a guidebook. Where do they go? Local restaurants, everything. Where's the park? Which is Coles? What is Woolies? What is Aldi? They're coming to a whole new country. Who could you introduce them to in the local community that might even show them around for a day? There are people who actually do that, and volunteer organisations who do that through Mission Australia and the Salvation Army, as an example. Our global talent pipeline. So not only do we have the on-ground recruitment team in Australia, we also have our team in South Africa, in Cape Town. We usually base our clinicians on proven experience. So what we're looking at is candidates who hold the relevant degree qualifications, their clinical background, and then their trained evidence. And obviously there's a deep dive at the moment into paediatrics in the sector. A lot of people will come to us with adult or psychiatry experience, for example, and they're finding it hard to get into the market without paediatrics experience. But we are upfront from the beginning, and then we try and resource a company who will want that role and that position to be filled. English speaking and culturally adaptable talent. There are people who are here today who we have spoken to at length. We've been to, for example, the beautiful region of Taree and really got a deep dive into their local community and what they do as a community to help people culturally settle. In Dubbo, for instance, there's a large Nepalese community. So if we're getting Nepalese candidates come through, we're looking at placing them in Dubbo. They already have a cultural fit. That is what we do. It is not about just saying, I want everyone from the UK. When you are about to see where we source our talent from. We place a lot of emphasis on the strong motivation for long-term relocation. We do that at screening. What's your motivation? Because if you're coming to Australia just because you want to, that's not an answer. You want to see your friends, that's not an answer. If you're a trained clinician and you're wanting to start a new life, whether you're single, with your family, we are a very lucky country. You want to be part of a strong community base, and most of all, you want to work for an ethical professional organisation and have professional growth. That's what clicks are. They're the kind of people we want to work with. We then have the extended global reach. So we currently have signed partners who are directing talent to us from the UK, Ireland, Canada, Argentina, India, and the Philippines. We are incredibly fortunate. Other migration companies who might say they do allied health recruitment, I can tell you from here, number one, they do not have 30 years of experience in the sector and 15 years recruiting allied health professionals. And number two, they certainly do not have full days on with his experience. So we are so fortunate that those partners have joined Paul and joined us and said, we trust you with our candidates. It's really important for us. The risk management, being OMARA registered in the migration sector is obviously exceptionally important. Every sponsorship we do, the compliance is built into that placement through our migration team. The accurate skills verification is the key. We do all of that cross-checking before they get to you, including they do the NDIS worker screening module. They get a copy of the aged care standards and how to marry that into their current practice. They get the NDIS code of conduct, and then I send them examples of FCA. These are just examples of what I send people to learn about the sectors. When we talk about English proficiency and cultural readiness, I have touched on that. Obviously, when we're looking at speech therapists, for example, we're looking for strong English, high-skilled tests. We've been explained to before by many organisations in the speech space that sourcing from certain countries is not adaptable to their model, and we completely respect that and their cultural preference. The cost and replacement guarantees, our recruitment fees only range between $7,500 to $12,500. We have a 3-month guarantee period with a 12-month replacement period. There is no one in the market that's going to offer you a 12-month replacement period. We do that because we genuinely believe in minimal turnover and churn. The reduced organisational risk. If you're a small business owner or you're a talent manager, you want to know that you're collaborating with someone who not only has your back but understands your organisational requirements. That is what we pride ourselves on, reducing your organisational risk. So here we have the breakdown. You can reduce your vacancy timeframes through your caseload. You will improve your workforce stability, you'll strengthen your clinical team, you'll lower your recruitment churn. We are compliant and we're confident in our compliance, and you will provide sustainable workforce growth through partnering with Deacon Associates. That is me. I'd like to thank you all. Now, the key is I have sent you all my contact details today via email. There is a link embedded in there. It'll go straight into your contacts on your PC or on your phone. Please reach out to me. I've already had people say, hey, let's connect for a one-to-one with Paul and I. We are more than happy to do that extra step for you. We would really love to partner with you, but more than anything, we like to get to know you and your organisation. Thank you. I'd like to say special thank you to Dave, who set all of this up for us today. We had a few tech issues coming into this, and it's all smooth, and we are very grateful. Thanks, everyone. I hope to hear from you soon, and I am going to hand over to Paul Deacon.
Thanks, Nat. Thank you for that. So that's a little bit about our recruitment division with regard to healthcare. I think it's really important to understand that when it comes to international recruitment, the key thing is that immigration is really one of the key, not the most important factor that needs to be integrated into the whole process. And so I'm here just to explain a little bit about how the employer sponsorship programs work. Some of you may already have sponsored people in the past, or some of you may be new to the whole employer-sponsored visa programs. But the information that I'm going to outline to you is a bit of an introduction or a bit more of conceptual understanding of how employer sponsorship works from an employer perspective. So I'm going to talk a bit about what is employer sponsorship and what does it mean. What are the visa programs, costs and estimated timeframes. Strategic visa pathways is important. That's also key when it's when you're thinking about workforce planning. Candidate visa requirements and what they're required to fulfil, and what our team ensure that they are able to be fulfilled before they come into the whole recruitment process, and an important understanding of what termination and what the implications of termination are for international workers. So what is employer sponsorship? So employer sponsorship essentially is a legal undertaking of the business with the immigration department to employ international workers. So employers must submit business information to the department, which includes operational, financial and employment documentation for them to determine whether you are a legally and actively operating business and whether you have genuine positions that need to be filled in your workforce. So these are employer-based applications that need to be approved by the immigration department before you even sponsor, or when you sponsor international workers. There are a list of employer obligations, and those employer obligations are not only imposed by the immigration department, but they're also obligations under employment and fair work regulations. So there are also certain costs that employers are required or obligated to pay. Sponsorship is only for full-time employment, and candidates or workers are required as part of the condition of their visa to only work for that employer during the period of their visa. So there are three key, or there are really only three visa programs that involve employment and require an employer to sponsor them. That's the 482, 186 and the 494 visas. Now, the 482 is a temporary work visa, so it's a visa that allows a person to come in and work for a business for only a temporary period of time, and that could be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years. And if you are going to sponsor on a temporary 4-year visa, there are options to renew that for a further period of time or an extension of time after that. There is no age limit for 482 visas. When it comes to permanent residency visas, there are two types of permanent residency visas. There is the 186 visa. That's immediate. That's a permanent residency visa. So that means that an employer has agreed to sponsor a worker who will obtain permanent residency immediately once that visa has been approved. It's the same for a 494 visa. The 494 visa is a conditional or a provisional permanent residency visa. This is only for regional areas in Australia, so outside of metropolitan areas. But I believe it's actually available for the full states of Western Australia, Northern Territory, and South Australia. But if your business is located within a 494 regional qualified area, then you can utilise or sponsor workers on this visa that requires them to live and work in that region and continue being employed with your business for at least 3 years, and then they can qualify for their own independent permanent residency after 3 years. So you've got an age limit for the 186 and 494. Actually, all 4 skilled permanent residency visas have an age limit of 45 years old. But I just want to give some range of costs around each of these visas. So if you're looking at a 482 visa, the employer obligations are what is listed there, the fees. It's about 6,000 to 10,000. Please note the fees that have been displayed are fees which include both our immigration service fees as well as the government application fees. So 482 visas about 3 to 6 months. 186 visas. 186 visas, fees around 10 to 13. Processing time for 186 is 12 to 18 months, and 494 visa is similar employer fees, and processing time is about 6 to 12 months. The processing times are important because that should be considered when it comes to workforce planning and when you want your employee or overseas worker to commence their employment. I've mapped out here just a recommendation around strategic pathway when it comes to work visas. As Nat pointed out earlier, international workers, yes, they want employment in Australia. Yes, they want that stability. Yes, they want that, that safety in that environment. But they do have short-term and long-term objectives, and more times, it's very common that a lot of international candidates are looking for employers who would who will offer permanent residency either immediately or somewhere down the track. Okay, from an employer perspective, it's unlikely, and most employers don't offer permanent residency immediately. They want to ensure that they fit into the culture, fit into the workplace. They're the right person that needs to be in the position. And so it's always advisable that they begin with a 482 temporary work visa. So what I've mapped out here is just a couple of options in terms of a pathway that can be presented to a candidate, and which is very common for a lot of our employers. So if you begin with an employer, you begin with a 482 visa for a period of 3 years, a 3-year contract. After 2 years, then you can look at offering permanent residency through either the 186 or the 494 programs. I think after 2 years is usually a good indication of whether you want to continue the candidate on their permanent ongoing role, whether they have that commitment and have settled into the business and even the region or the town that you're in, it's always a good point at which a discussion around permanent residency could be had. So after 2 years in a 482, you can look at the 186, where you'd be offering permanent sponsorship, and then they would become a permanent resident. But for those in regional areas and towns that want to have their commitment, I suppose, then a 494 visa may be a suitable option to offer, because they will be required to continue working and remaining for another 3 years until they themselves, the individual, can obtain their own or qualify for their own permanent residency. Okay, so this is just an overview of the candidate requirements when it comes to visas. And this is the checklist of criteria that all candidates are subject to prior to even, apply. Well, when they apply for a role with us, so you're confident that they do satisfy the visa requirement. So they do need to hold the relevant academic qualification or education for that occupation. They most likely will be licensed. If it's a licensed occupation or profession here, it will most likely be a licensed occupation in their home country. So they will be required to have that license or registration. They do need to meet minimum English language requirements. They will have to obtain any mandatory Australian license or registration by the Australian regulatory body, whether it be provisional or full license. They at least need to have or have in the process of obtaining that Australian registration or license. We also ensure that there is obviously work experience. What you need is skill that where it's the candidates that have had practice, and so not only for the visa but also for our clients, they do need to have, and we ensure that they have 1 to 3 years full-time work experience at least. But of course, it's also subject to the selection criteria that you would like them to have. Now, DAMA is a program that is part of the initiative with the Immigration Department. You may have heard of this program. So it's called the Designated Area Migration Agreement. And this is only for regional and rural areas where states or regional councils have a pre-approved labour agreement with the Immigration Department. Now, the purpose of the DAMA program is to allow businesses in certain regional areas to seek an exemption for candidates' requirements that do not meet the standard visa requirements. So these exemptions could be the age, so people who are 45 or above. We know that some employers have really good candidates who want to retain very good workers, but they may already be, mid 40s or late 40s. So they're through the DAMA program, you can seek exemption to for the age limit. There's also exemptions around occupations. So normally on the general skilled list, you wouldn't have occupations or occupations eligible for sponsorship with regard to, therapy assistants or healthcare assistants or aged care workers. But there are some regions under the DAMA program that will allow you to sponsor healthcare assistants or aged care workers. There are exemptions around salary, English score, work experience. So depending on what region you're in or what state you're in, we'll be able to give you some more detail around what your state or region have, what exemptions they have with regard to these work visas. So termination is always, it's an important topic to understand and understand the implications from an immigration perspective. What happens if an overseas worker is terminated? What do you do? What can you do? They get here within maybe as soon as they arrive, or within 6 months, they have decided to go to another employer, or it hasn't worked out, and you've decided to terminate them. What happens after that? So the only obligation that an employer has with regard to the immigration department is to inform the immigration department. And that's done through emailing them. And after that, that's pretty much all you need to and can do, because employers cannot request the department to cancel anyone's visa or deport them or anything like that. That is up to the immigration department to go ahead and do their procedures and their investigations around that person holding the work visa. So if the first thing you do upon termination, regardless of which party has terminated, is to inform the immigration department. For those who have had a candidate that has been terminated or left within the first 12 months of employment, you may be eligible for a partial refund of the department's fees and the SAF levy. Well, it's actually the SAF levy, but it still goes to the department. So you may be able to obtain a refund for that. What happens to that person after they terminate? Where do they go? Can they find a new employer? They can find a new employer. They do have 6 months to find a new employer and have that new employer take over their work visa. Employers are, however, if the candidate or the worker is unable to find a new employer, then you will be required to pay a one-way flight ticket for them back to their home country, only if they have requested it in writing to you. So they need to request it in writing. And secondly, if they don't find a new employee to take over their visa. Again, these are conditions that only apply to temporary visas, so the 482 and the 494. It doesn't apply to the 186 visa because once that's approved, they're permanent residents already. I think what's also important just to keep in mind is immigration laws and other laws are still apply. So even though even though these are the requirements and the obligations under the and implications under the immigration department, please note that employment conditions and welfare of international workers, even if they're temporary workers, are still protected by Australian law and workplace laws. So that includes employment laws, fair work, work safe, all those regulations that apply to Australians equally apply to international workers. So yes, do keep that. Okay, so hopefully you found that information useful and valuable. Thank you very much for being part of the live stream. I'll get Nat to come back here so we can bow together. But hopefully you'll get in touch with us, or we'll get in touch with you. But as mentioned by Nat, we are a team of specialist recruiters, migration agents, and lawyers, where we do provide that holistic international workforce solution to businesses and have that properly integrated and ethical and compliant, so that these the service can be delivered with the expectations that are set out.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. All right. Thanks a lot.